Hello, and welcome to the Practitioner podcast. This is a podcast from us at Renaissance. We're a network of missional practitioners and microchurches in the greater Boston area. Every episode, we talk about themes around living on mission and living in microchurch community. We hope our conversations always touch on the practical realities of everyday, ordinary people. And this is because our mission is about cultivating beautiful kingdom people embedded in the everyday stuff of life. This is Christine Lee, and I am here with the one and only
Drew Thurman.
Hi, Drew. How are you?
I'm cold. I don't ever get cold, and I walked to work
I was going to
today.
say, I'm surprised.
I didn't look at the weather today. I walked down to the end of the street. I about got blown over, and as I turned the corner, and then I looked at my phone, and it said, feels like 2 degrees. And I was like, probably would have been helpful to stare at my weather app this morning before I left. So.
Yeah, that's rough. I just took my dog out this morning, and I had to take him out right before bed too. And it was kind of cold last night, but it wasn't that bad. And I walked out this morning. I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What's happening? And I don't even walk to work.
I think I saw last year was the windiest year on record in Boston. And,
oh, really?
Yeah. So, and apparently we're just picking up right where we left off. So
love that for us. You've lived in other parts of America, though. Do you think Boston is windier than Chicago?
I've never lived in Chicago. I mean, yeah, it's a different kind of windy. But yes, it is like, I mean, I lived in Central Illinois for a while, and there's just nothing to stop the wind there.
I know, it's so terrible. So, I was going to say, I feel like it's so much worse in the Midwest when it comes to wind.
Yeah. But I feel like it's windier more often here. But it's just that when the wind blows there, there's just nothing to stop it. And so it's awful. So, yeah.
It's just like your skin getting ripped from your body immediately.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, I feel like I'm really excited for this episode, but before we get into it, because we're going to talk about kind of just being ordinary, which I'm excited. Feels like, don't worry, it's not going to be super boring, everybody. But before we get into it, I thought it would be fun to share out like something small in your everyday life that just makes it drastically better in your mind, even if other people might miss it. Do you have something off the top of your mind, or do you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I think about this all the time, and it sounds so silly, but I love that my gas tank in my car is on the passenger side, and I love the tiny mirrors of my compact SUV that makes it so there's no blind spots on my car. And I think about it all the time because I didn't always have a car. And so I try to be like grateful that I have one. But every time I roll into a BJ's, which here is like BJ's Wholesale, it's like the New England version of Costco. And I'm trying to get gas.
Not as good, but yes, yeah.
Okay, you can stop being a hater. The lines are so long for gas, but everybody's gas tank is on the driver's side. And they're like are very strict about directing traffic in it. So you like can't pull into like a spot where you like reverse around. You have to just follow the side of the gas. And I'm like, I live my life and I'm like, I get to cut the line because there's like no cars in the passenger side of the gas tank. And every time I do it, I'm like, I'm so thankful. I feel like God hooked me up with this car and cutting the BJ's line. I'm feeling grateful.
I was not expecting that to be where you took this topic. So I love that's... my mind went in a totally different direction, and I really appreciate that. Like, talk about really being appreciative of the small things in life. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I like every time I pull into beach once a week, I'm like, wow, I love this.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you?
I think for me, I was just going to say, like, I'm very grateful for vinyls. Like, I love having a record player. I was like late, which I'm a huge music guy, but I was like really late on the bandwagon. But I just really appreciate it slows me down. So like I really like that. Like anyone who's a purist, not only is the sound quality just incredible, but it also like you're forced to listen to a piece of music or a movement of music in its entirety. So you're not just picking your favorite songs or bouncing around. I mean, I love creating playlist on Spotify and jamming out in the car, but I really like the ability to listen to different vinyls. I'm a big jazz fan, so Yeah, I really have enjoyed it. And so I always tell people like a great way to know if I'm spiritually healthy is, am I making pour over coffee at home? Am I listening to vinyls, and am I reading books? Like that's a really good way to know if I'm in a good like mental health space. You
Yeah.
know that I'm doing those activities are a part of my life. So a lot of days we listen to a lot of music in our house. We come home, throw a vinyl on where we're cooking dinner or we're just like walking around the house, and that is very a very centering activity for me. So yeah,
I love that. What's your top vinyl right now?
I there's a lot. I would probably say I've been listening to several Miles Davis vinyls,
Classy.
and it just feels appropriate for the darkness of winter and the cold. So yeah, I like jazz all year long, but it obviously fall and winter it just feels like it hits even
Yeah.
better. So yeah.
Feels so good. It always feels right.
Yeah. So
Well,
my again, totally different. I appreciate that. I was going very
I'm
like
like, I love my gas cap. And you're like, I'm just an academic in my home listening to my vinyls. And I'm like, it's called blue collar, okay? Blue collar versus
no.
academia.
I
It
really wish I
starts
would have
here.
thought of. I wish I would have thought of something like that. That is great. Like it's such a small thing that's like makes a big difference. Yeah.
It does. I literally think about it every time and I feel grateful every time I get gas. Um, well, I hope people think about their own thing. And if you are more classy like Drew, or if you're just like down in the gas station culture like me, let us know. But
Down. Yeah. Yeah. I like a good gas station too. So you don't
yeah,
have to.
okay. Okay. Do you listen to your vinyls at the gas
No.
station?
No. No. No.
uh,
I could. I'm happy to hit up Cumberland Farms and be very happy with my
Cumbies,
yeah with my
a New
snack
England
wrap and
classic.
yeah.
Well, we go back and forth each episode on who's bringing the theme, and it's not gas station. So today, though, Drew, you do get to bring the theme for us. So bring us there.
I just thought it'd be really nice. Some of it's been just listening to some of Kate Bowler's work and just really appreciating her voice, which has been a big guiding light for me over the last few years. But yeah, I think we're turning the page. It's the beginning of a year, the new year. We obviously at that point, for all of us, as crazy as it sounds, we just start wanting to bring on new habits or be a new version of ourselves. And I think there is a deep pressure to think about self-improvement and self-optimization. And we'll get to this in this episode, am Exhibit A of someone who struggles with this a lot. I've always been a big goal planner and setter and like trying to maximize and be more efficient and a better
Yeah.
version of me all the time. But I'm wondering right now, and we'll get into some of my thinking, but I think we're in a period of time that as we enter 2026, I think it might be the year that we might need to say goodbye to some of that and just choose to be more present and rooted in the life God has already given us. And I think there's a lot of people that are exhausted in my life and worn out and burned out. And I just thought it'd be a really great time for us to talk about when we think about mission and microchurch, you don't necessarily think of these themes, but I think 2026 might be the year that everyday ordinary practitioners feel permission to be just rooted in their everyday ordinary lives.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think we'll get more into this, but I resonate with that a lot, and I'm not a goal setter. So if you're like me and you're not like a New Year's resolution or like I always have a plan for things, I still think this is really relevant, and hopefully we'll talk more about this. I think some of that is like the way that a lot of churches disciple us about growth, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we can start with just the idea of like the self-help industry. Do you like have any thoughts on it? Do you want to bring us there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we just heard me talk about books. So anytime I'm in a local bookstore all the time, local bookstores all the time, and I think everybody who's ever been in a local bookstore knows that it's not gonna take you very long to walk into a bookstore and see a table or a rack with self-improvement being at the front of things. Podcasts are always, these are some of the
Yeah.
number one podcasts in terms of listens. And I think I just read somewhere that it's projected that the self-help industry is going to be a $80 billion industry by 2030. So
Wow.
clearly, I'm not alone. There's a lot of us who are trying to become better versions of ourselves. I feel like a lot of the influence culture now on social media is like really geared towards a lot of this.
Hmm.
Here's my life hacks, or here, here's the thing that I do that, makes me more efficient, or watch me as I wake up at my 5 a.m. schedule as I get ready for work. And you're like, oh, okay, like,
Yeah.
cool tech bro with no family that's 24 telling me how to live my life. I appreciate it. But, I think that there is clearly a massive appeal
Mm.
because we're consuming a lot of this content, and there wouldn't be that much of an industry built around it if there wasn't a market for it. And there's probably, I mean, I'm not gonna try to get real nerdy, Doctor Ooh, and go, go super deep into some of the like probably philosophical reasons of that. But I do think we live in a culture that is statistically the most individualized culture on the planet. I
Yep.
think a lot of us feel a deep pressure, an inherent pressure to make our stories matter and to know that our
Hmm.
life has meaning. And I think the more that we get trapped in the just vicious cycle of modernity and how much a lot of traditional avenues of meaning making have been stripped away from us,
Mm.
we're even more hungry to find a way to make our story matter. The institutions and the traditional ways that you would go about making meaning are slipping away from us all the time. We're becoming
Can you
more
give an
lonely.
example?
Well, I mean, we know, I mean, if anyone who's ever read the book Bowling Alone knows that, you know, church, clubs, things that, traditional avenues of work. A lot of us now, we're less neighborly, we're less connected to physical labor.
Mm.
So I mean, you think about it, like if you're a person who's sitting on a computer, 8, 10 hours a day just on Zoom calls, or, you're just constantly shooting emails out, and you're in this vicious cycle of, I work and I'm trying to, if I have a family, I'm trying to make sure my kids have a good education and a good life. And, you're just going through all these, through kind of the monotony of that. It's hard to like sometimes be like, does what I do matter? A lot of people are like, probably don't feel a lot of resonance with their career. It's just like, hey, this is a great way to make some money and
Hmm.
again, pay the bills. And so, yeah, there's this fracturing. I mean, we know statistically we've never been more isolated and alone. And there's not a lot of on ramps of things that like what used to be the ways that we built community. And those traditional institutions, for all their flaws, and there's many of them, were a source of meaning making for us. And so I think outside of that, we feel both probably both and like we're losing that, and yet because of the influence of technology, we're exposed to more
Hmm.
options of
Yes.
potential ways that we could make meaning and have significance. And so we feel this deep pressure of I don't have what used to give meaning, and now I have more. Like I'm going down the cereal aisle. There's more options than I know what to do with. I feel this inherent pressure. Do I choose the right thing? And then do I need to let everyone know that I'm making this choice so that I can get feedback and affirmation that what I'm doing is something of significance. So all that I think probably is why the self-help industry is killing it right now, is
Hmm.
because we're more in search, we're more fragile than we've ever been, and more in search of significance and meaning. And we'll look at anybody who can give us some little hack that might seem like it's going to help us move the needle just a little bit that direction. What about you? What do you think about when you think of the self-help industry? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I also was just thinking about how part of living in a really individualized society with so many options is like this trap of it's a myth of I can be whatever I want to be, right? Like I
Yep.
have all the options, I have so many resources, and
Yep.
therefore I'm in full control of my life
Yep.
to be whatever it is I want to be. I can achieve whatever it is I want to achieve. And yet, all of us know deep down, whether it's because life hits us in the face or just like that deep sense of like, you really can't. Like
Yeah.
that there are true limitations on your life, whether you want to acknowledge them or not. And there are things that are not right with the world, whether or not you want to acknowledge it or not. And I think some people also approach the self-help industry just trying to figure out what is that. I mean, theologically, I would say the impact of the fall, right? It's like none of us can get around it. And I think people wrestle with it of like, not everything is not right in the world, and I do not have control over it, whether it's my world or the world around me, and I don't know what to do with that. So if I can just optimize myself to be the very best version and the thing that I want to be, I think people feel frozen in paralysis with all the choices of like, I don't even know what I want to be. Like, if I can be anything, I don't know what it is. But then also you get confronted by the reality that the world is not okay. Deep down, maybe I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I don't really have an answer. And I think we've talked about this before about some of why maybe sometimes faith spaces really rely on like, here are the things you need to believe and the things you need to do, because that sense of certainty does feel grounding, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing of the self-help industry of like being able to be like, if I feel this massive void of being frozen by all my choices or not knowing what to do with that sense of like, something's not right, but I don't know what it is, or I don't know how to make meaning of my life. It's easier if someone could just say, do these 5 things and you'll feel better. Or here's this new formula that's going to make you the best you've ever been. You know, like, it's like we all look for that sense of certainty. And it's really hard to live in the tension of, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think with like the lack of community, some in the past probably given to us through some like certain institutions, but just I think people are very lonely, right? We know that. So
Yeah.
when you don't have community, it's like, how do you wrestle through that? Like, because I think so much of our meaning does derive from the community around us, or it's a space where we can work out our doubts, we can work out our questions. And you know, like I hear all the time from some of my clients of like, they don't know who else to talk to during the week, so they just ask ChatGPT. And it's just like I mean, it's
Talking
again,
about that, yeah.
I know, yeah, it's sad because it's like, well, they don't have anybody else to shoot these ideas with or air out their fears with. And I think that part, of course, then you're like, well, if somebody can give me a quick answer and I can try it out, I'll look to that. That makes sense.
Well, I really like to circle back on one of the very first things you said. I think there's another part to this that you kind of alluded to, is that there are limitations, and I think that's part of the problem too, is we're not admitting there's limitations. And in fact, you know, there's been a lot of data that's starting to be coming out that we are actually, the more that we try to maximize, it actually just increases. It doesn't actually help us. It just increases the chaos and the noise. And so this idea that like there's only so many hours in a day, and yet we try to pretend that there's not. There's only so many years in a life, and yet we don't do very well talking about finitude and our limitations. And so we have this constant maximize. And again, it backfires. I mean, I was just listening to Kate Bowler talk about this. Like, anyone at work knows this. Like, if you're more efficient at your work and getting more stuff done, I think the thought would be like, oh, then I'm going to get to this point where my email box is empty and I'm going to be on the other side. And instead, when you show yourself to be really good at something, you get more stuff on your plate. The better you are at answering emails, the more emails you get back. Like it's a vicious cycle. And so the idea that like self-optimization is going to somehow give me the peace and the tranquility that I'm hoping for is a myth, because all it does is just create more chaos. I think there was a study done in the 80s that, again, it was a little bit thinking through like more of a traditional paradigm of family in terms of men working and women being at home. But it was like the more technology that was introduced in the kitchen, the more stressed women actually got, and it didn't actually solve problems because it gave them more options of things they could do that they weren't doing before. And I think there's a lot of that happens in our lives that, like, to your point, we're not admitting our limitation. And we could probably end this episode right here if we would just admit our finitude and our limits. we would probably solve a lot, but we don't get there. So I just wanted to hone in on that, but I also want to like turn the corner. You alluded to something else, and I think I'd love for you to talk about this. Is how do you think the self-help industry gets blurred with spiritual formation and our own spiritual development? Like, I think there's becoming an increasing amount of therapeutic language and self-help language that's happening in our churches. And many of us feel this. So I would love for you to kind of talk about how you see that and where that might get us in trouble sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel it in maybe the language I didn't have 10 years ago that I do have now, is that so much of what's normalized and like framed as spiritual formation is still just that sense of like up and to the right. Like, it's just that up and to the right isn't maybe like money. Sometimes it is. Like some church contexts it is.
Yeah.
But it's like up and to the right. My quiet time is longer. Like I'm just deeper. Like whatever it is, like there's still just this sense of like exponential growth that should be happening. And I think we couch a lot of our churches like that. Like it's easier to see from a church context, right? It's like up and to the right. Like you should have more people. You should have a bigger budget. You should have more baptisms. And that means God is in this and you're doing well and you're doing the things you're supposed to as a Christian. And then I think what happens like in an individual Christian's life is like spiritual formation means like, yeah, I can do these things longer. Like I am like, and it's not that like that wouldn't be good or nice, but sometimes like life isn't like that, like, and I think we've talked about like sometimes things that get couched as, there are books that talk about like the importance of Sabbath, and it's like, yeah, like I do think that's important and scriptural, but also the way that it gets framed, you really can only do it if you have a lot of privilege. And like if I work a job where I make enough money that I cannot work a whole day of the week, like that's great, I guess. But there are some people that is not an option, and it doesn't mean that God's not at work in their life, and it doesn't mean that like that what they're doing and their attempt to seek the Lord doesn't matter. But a lot of times I think spiritual formation gets framed in a way of like, these are the things that you ought to do. And if you do them, you'll get better. You'll become like Christ. And it's like, it's not even like wrong sometimes. I just think it's not expansive enough that God can work in other means, that God can work in our lows, that God can work in our frailty, that God can work in our limitations, and that like we don't always have to be hustling to grow. And it's like that verse where Paul's writing about how like he watered and this other person planted, but God is the one that makes things grow. But I think a lot of the American church is like, no, like we got to make it grow. Like we're the one that have to make sure that like this thing is blowing up and getting better, and I'm getting better. And I think I've definitely fallen into that a lot. Like I was just talking about with our team the other day that I still feel a lot of guilt sometimes that like I'm not doing enough for my microchurch. I'm not doing enough for Renaissance. And that's literally not coming from anywhere in those communities. Like no one is telling me that. People are telling me the opposite of that. But it's just so ingrained in me that like if this matters to me, and if I'm growing, if I'm doing the right things for Jesus, then I should be doing more. I should be producing more. I should be like, you should be able to see it in these very like tactile, tangible ways. And intellectually, I don't believe that's true, but I think that's the wrestle, right? Is like, I'm in this space in my faith where I feel very lucky that I'm in faith communities that really are trying to help me resist that. And I have a framework where I also know that that's not true. And yet it is so ingrained in me that I oftentimes live with pervasive guilt, like where I'm like, ugh, I feel that I'm not doing enough. And I think I've found a lot more freedom in the last couple years, but I think in some ways, even in my own life and experience, I'm seeing this stuff really gets discipled in you, like, and it's really hard to undo and get yourself untangled from. I don't know, like, does that make sense? Like, do you have?
No, I mean, I would have said almost the exact same thing. Yeah, like I think you're nailing it, and I think there is a not only just a corporate, but there is a personal metrics that is ingrained in us, and I think that's again, the church likes to act like it's not a part of culture. It is. I mean, this, again, I've referenced her several times. This is where Kate Bowler's work is so powerful to me, as she's made a very strong case as someone who's looked at the prosperity gospel inside of our churches in a North American context, that so much of what culture is giving us is the prosperity gospel in secular form. And to act like we're not swimming in those waters and that doesn't inundate us, it would just be silly. It is true. We are promised, if you do X, you'll get Y. If you hustle more, if you're more disciplined, if you're more regimented, if you eat the right things, if you do this, you're going to live a long, healthy, happy life. You're going to look better. You're going to, all these things. And the reality is it is a prosperity gospel that will not meet us where we're at. And I think we do bring that into our spirituality. And I think we think, if my quiet time is X, if my prayer life becomes this, if I serve in this way, or if I do this stuff in my faith community, everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows. And this doesn't mean that we don't want to grow. This doesn't mean that we don't want to become more like Christ, that we don't want to take steps in our sanctification, to put to death sin in our lives, and to step into the fully aliveness that God would have for us. But it's just admitting, like, there's a lot of things that are out of our control, that are out of our agency, that while we would like to pretend that's not the case, it's there. There are people who are going through seasons of life so far beyond their control that they can't do some of the things, that they can't improve this year, or they are, there's some external forces that are pushing against them, where they just need to take a deep breath, and be okay with that. There's tragedy. People go through tragedies, and I think we don't have a category for how do we talk about spirituality and growth when we're in the midst of tragedy or in the midst of pain, without trying to maximize it or find a silver lining right away, or find some way to harness it. And we can go down the list of so many other things. And so I think, I love what you're getting at. I think having a view of God's work in our lives that isn't defined by corporate metrics, I think, is really important. And I think part of it is I think we don't understand the role of grace the way that we should, and how much God continues to heap upon us grace upon grace upon grace. It's not a one-time thing. It's something that we experience on an ongoing basis. And also, I would say the only other thing I would add is just I really appreciate that spiritual formation is becoming so much a part of the conversation in the church. And we obviously have worked very hard to incorporate more of that. But I even just sent you an article this week from Richard Beck on intentionality. And he makes the argument that 500 years ago, that most of what we view as intentionality in our spiritual formation were things that just were so far beyond the way you had so few choices to make 3, 4, 500 years ago. The kind of career you would have, what your life would do, you weren't able to just move and do whatever else. And so much intentionality language is based on this idea that everything's up to our choice and will. And I think a lot of us have bought into that. And so we think our whole spiritual life comes down to what we can do. And my hope would be, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but my hope would be that we could be a counter voice in that says, no, and again, I need this as much as anybody, it's okay to take a deep breath. It's okay to be in a season that feels overwhelming. It's okay where you've already hit your maximum amount. You've hit your limits. It's okay, as much as our culture would like to say, educate yourself on everything. It's okay for you to say, I want to be a better person. I don't want to be negligent, but I also can't deal with every global issue in the world and work through that and have a fully formed opinion and be able to do something about something. I'm one person in one place. I'm not omnipresent. I'm not omnipotent. I'm not omniscient. I'm just me. I'm finite. I'm a human being with real limitations, and I am not less than, or I'm not disappointing God for me to recognize those limits.
Yeah. And I think what you're hitting at, I'm even thinking about this past week at my micro church that meets in New Hampshire. We started the new year talking about like sharing out a spiritual goal that we each have. And again, you know, like it's easy to like look at that and be like, oh my gosh, like yes, like let's really like get our like spiritual workout on. But my goal was actually just to try to let God engage this part of me that I feel like I've really shut down the last 6 months. Like I was thinking about, and like that's what I shared with our group. I'm like, I feel like there's this part of me that is like a little bit numb, and I feel like 6 months ago I started becoming aware, but it was almost like every time I thought about broaching it, I just really did not want to, and I was like really resistant. And I think part of this is helpful that I like am a therapist and
Yeah.
like and do this work a lot with other people. So in my own life, I was just thinking about as I was really resistant towards letting God meet me there or wanting to even like talk with the Lord about this. I feel like what was different is maybe in the past I would have felt like I just really got to push through and like tackle this and fix it. And instead I feel like the last 6 months I have just felt like God is patient with me. And when I am ready, I believe he'll meet me there. And he's not trying to coerce me into something that I don't feel ready for. I don't even really know what it is. Like I can honestly like be like, I don't know what it is. I don't really want to look at it. I don't really know what it is. I just can feel something is off just in this one part of my life. But I can't really put language about it. And I know some of that just takes exploration and stillness. And I just really haven't wanted to. And that obstinance is weird too, you know, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I think it's been really like a big change in my own spirituality, but I think in the spiritual community I'm a part of is that one, I can share that and be received and not like, well, why didn't you 6 months ago start working on this, you know, like, or be judged, you know. I think like a lot of times people wouldn't like berate me, but you could just feel that judgment of like, you should have been doing better.
Yeah.
And I think I felt very much like this is a space where I can be held in that and held accountable now. Like, of like, this is something I do want to like look at and I do want God to meet me in, and I'm ready for that now. And I think it's now for me a different experience of God of like, he didn't smite me in the last 6 months. I think like a lot of that mechanism in me in the past has been, if I do not get better, I will be punished. Like if I know something is wrong and I am not actively working on eradicating whatever's wrong and fixing it, like God is going to be mad at me. And I think it is just like receiving grace, like knowing like I am a broken, finite human that really needs grace. And in this weird part of me that I don't even really have language for what's wrong, like God is giving me grace by being patient with me and letting me go to him when I'm ready to deal with it. Which I think is like going to be a journey I'm on this year. But I feel like so, at least for me in this part of my life and what I'm working through right now, I'm recognizing like, I don't think I've ever had that in a faith space before. And I don't think I've ever had that in my own frame for what like life with Jesus ought to look like. Which I think is like sad. And also like, you know, I'm so grateful now that I do have that, but I guess maybe why I'm sharing this story is like, for some people listening, they might not have that now. And I think what I want to say is like, you deserve to have that. And like, I think like the community that, and who Jesus is and the community that he offers is patient and kind and gentle, you know, like, and I think so many of us don't experience that because I think hustling and American triumphalism and hustle culture is not patient. It's not kind. It's not gentle. It's like, go, get better. And I think sometimes it's hard to recognize when it is the water that you swim in, that's very antithetical to who God is.
Yeah. No, as you were talking, I was thinking of Matthew 11:28-30 of just come to me, all you who are, you know, heavy laden or burdened. And I love, the way the Message puts it, come learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Yeah. And I think, as someone who is an achiever and a striver, I constantly have to, you know, I'm resonating with what you're saying, like from multiple different levels. One, I'm always like, if there's some part of me that I'm not optimizing or self-improving, I think I'm like, I feel all this guilt and shame, like what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Or like in your case, like I also feel a little guilt and shame when I don't know how to deal with it because and sometimes I'm just like, I mean, I've been struggling and I've got coping mechanisms that are just helping me get through my stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had a chance to deal with that thing. And then I feel guilt and shame for that because it's like,
Yeah.
well, if I would have not had this, coping mechanism, and not that we shouldn't, again, check and make sure we're trying to become more healthy, but it's just this
Yeah.
idea that I think it's okay for us just to just take a deep breath and just admit and talk about in our communities like 2025 was a hard year for a lot of people. And I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us entered this year, we limped into this year
Mm-hmm.
and we feel like there's so much anger and vitriol and division in our culture. We're bombarded with headlines and things that we probably were never designed to experience. I
Mm-hmm.
just saw this just a couple of days ago that in a poll, 82% of Americans watched the video of the shooting in Minneapolis. 82% of, I mean, think about, like to just witness something like that is so brutal and to think that doesn't stay in our bodies and that we don't feel that would be silly. We have, it's, we have inflation, and many of us are struggling to just pay our bills. Groceries cost more, gas costs more than it did.
Mm-hmm.
We've got families, and we have the job market's tough. There's just so much going on. Not to admit, just like the daily grind that is living.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us walk into this year, and I think we're so tired, and we're
Yeah.
stressed, and we're overwhelmed, and we're burned out. And then it's like, oh, you've got to have resolutions. Now you've got to like optimize, and
Yeah.
we're like, man, I don't have the energy. I don't have it this year. I don't have that extra juice.
Mm-hmm.
And then we feel guilt and shame, like what's wrong with me that I
Yeah.
don't. I get on the internet and I see these influencers, with that look great or seem to have it together. I see this book, and I think it's okay to just say, despite the fact that the culture acts like we have no limitations, I think it's okay for me just to admit that that's where I'm at, and know that God is meeting me there in that moment. That what He has for me is not just determined on me and my own agency and my own will, trying to improve. And I think actually okay that His grace is going to meet me, even if I happen, because of life circumstances, to just take a step back
Mm-hmm.
and like, okay, yeah, like life is more like peaks and valleys. There's moments where of breakthrough, and then there's moments of difficulty. Like God is just as there in the valleys or in the moments where it's tougher than He is on these spiritual highs. And so, if we don't have a spirituality that meets us in that,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't allow us to step into a new year and take a deep breath and exhale, I think we miss the message that of what Jesus is offering us. And maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe it's because I'm one of those people that limped into this year and
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like I have it. But I think I need that message as much as anybody else.
Yeah. And maybe like what I would add is like I think we talk a lot about I think some of us can understand like God meets us in the mountain tops, God meets us in the valleys, but the thing that came to mind was like God meets us in the Midwest, which I'm not a huge fan of the Midwest even though I lived there forever, where it's just like flat. It's not like it's just kind of like mediocre, mid, as the kids say, like and I think a lot of times we think if we're in that space, we need to be like finding a hill to climb.
Yeah,
And sometimes life is just normal
yeah.
and it's okay. Like it's okay if you don't know what your next big thing is. It's okay if you don't know like how you're going to improve. Like you don't need to.
Well, and as you saying that, I think maybe the conversation we should have is, and maybe that's the thing God wants to teach us.
Mhm.
That this isn't just a season to like, oh, I got to get through till I can get to my next goal. But maybe
Yeah.
the lesson God wants to teach some of us is like, that was never what I had for you.
Mhm.
And in fact, I just wanted you to wake up that I'm present. no matter what, and even in those plateaus, even in the monotony and the mundane, ordinary, dishwashing, kids screaming, struggle to get yourself up in the morning days. Like God's like, I'm just as present here, and I'm wanting to use that, and I want you to join me in that. And like, if we can like reorient our lives to starting to find the beauty and the presence of God in that, how much does that change how we live, how much our spirituality changes, how much our missional life changes? If we
Yep.
can start to have that right. I sent you the quote I had read somewhere. I don't even remember now. I read too much stuff, but it was just like this idea that we don't dance to get to the end of the song, to
Yep.
music. We dance because the music is beautiful and we just want to be present in it. And I think there's a lot of us that are so busy trying to achieve some end in our lives that I think we're missing that the fact that we woke up today is a gift, whether it's burdensome or not, and whether or not it makes an Instagram highlight reel, like God's there and he's meeting us. So I think that's a really great reminder. Like, I think maybe my image of the year is going to be like a brown cornfield that's flat. Like, remind me, like,
Love
God is.
that. We're gonna
So
get some soybeans. It's fine.
I might frame that for you just because you have
Thank you
such a
so much. I would
positive.
love that.
Yeah.
We'll love that. That's great. I guess like maybe my question is like, I think we're starting to get there. Like valuing presence over self-optimization and being rooted where we already are, being okay in who we already are and believing God is at work still, rather than just trying to continuously improve.
Yeah.
So like what do you think that looks like?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is just reimagining the, well, number one, we need practices that help us recognize God's presence. And we're trying to do that a lot at Renaissance. I should back up first and just say that of like,
Yeah.
this is why when we talk about things like Lectio Divina, when we talk about things like listening prayer, when we talk about things like the prayer of examine, how do I have practices that help me realize whether or not it was my best day, whether or not I achieved anything? God, where are you present? Where's your voice? Where's your spirit at work? But beyond that, I think we need other heroes. And I think one of the things I know part of it from my own journey is as I get older, my heroes have changed. But I also recognize that that's not true for everybody because I have, men and women in my life that are decades older than me who, unfortunately, I don't think have learned some of the same lessons I have and seem to still valorize a different kind of person. But when I was in my early 20s, it was the outliers, it was the achievers, it was the people that seemed to accomplish and conquer and do all these awesome things, and thought to myself, like, I want to be one of those special kind of people that are standing out. And I think the older I get, the more I realize that the most beautiful people and my biggest heroes actually are people who just live very small and present lives. And they're rooted in a context, in a community. And while they might not be known by the masses, they're doing, but they're so connected to God's spirit and so connected to God's presence that they're okay, you know, living that sort of life. Those are the kind of people that I now gravitate towards. They seem, and I think a lot of us probably can think about those kind of people that, like, when you have a conversation with them or where you're around them, they just have gravitas. They seem to connect you. I think of, there's like a Fleet Foxes song that I've been thinking about a lot recently, where they have some lyrics that's something along the lines of, and I'm probably getting this wrong, but just paraphrasing, I was raised up believing that I was somehow unique, a snowflake distinct among snowflakes, unique in every way that you can see. But by now I've started to realize that I'd much rather be a functioning cog in some great machinery well beyond, doing something well beyond me. And I think that just resonates with me. Like, I think it's the people that I see in my life that, do maybe small, what seemingly small, insignificant things, but they do so with great love and great presence, a great connection to what God's doing. And I think I might have quoted this before, but I come back to it and I think it's worthy of quoting so many times. George Eliot has this really great quote that, "For the growing good of the world is partially dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number of the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs." And the reality is, I love what he's saying there, is there are a lot of people who have done incredible things to make the world what it is, that God has used, who live in unvisited tombs, who will never know their names in the course of human history, and yet they have lived a significant life that God has used. And I think if we can just get to that place of redefining our heroes and what makes a good life, I think it maybe helps us start to take a deep breath and give ourselves a little more grace, that all of existence does not weigh on me creating for myself my own meaning and significance and championing that into the world where everyone thinks I'm awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely resonate with so much of that. And I think like the other thing I add is I think you have to be honest with somebody about who you really are and where you really are. I think sometimes it's easy to, just wrestle with these things on your own. And even if you're willing to be honest with yourself about what you're going through, it's hard to really let somebody else in. And so whether or not you have like a microchurch to share that with, like find a friend just to be like, this is where I'm actually at in my faith. These are the questions that are bubbling up for me. This is what I don't have together. This is what I don't know. And it's hard, I think that really grounds us in our reality, speaking it out loud and saying, this is where I really am. I'm not like going to pretend that things are fine and I'm doing great and I'm getting better. Maybe what we speak out is like, I don't think I'm getting better. I think I'm stuck here.
Yeah. Well, I almost wonder how many microchurches that don't even have those conversations. Like, like I'm in a season like guys, I don't have it. Like I'm going to need everything you have because I'm struggling just to show up, or I'm struggling just to put one foot in front of the other. And if we need to have more of those honest conversations, because if those aren't happening, we can't really truly be a spiritual family and lift each other up when we have need.
Yeah.
I would love for you, kind of similar to what we're having in this conversation, but I would love for you to talk through, this is a podcast on being a practitioner. We talked about mission and microchurch. That was at the top of the show. When we think about being missional, so often we think about activity, we think about striving, we think about pragmatically, what do I do to influence people and do justice work and make a big splash, make a big difference. So how does this conversation we're having kind of shift maybe how people think about things like mission and practitionership?
Yeah. I think this goes back to so much of what we talked about God's agency and slowing down and waiting on the Spirit to prompt you. And I think to me, like we've talked about in the past of like, I think so much about being a practitioner is truly being like a non-anxious presence in the world so that you can respond when God brings somebody across your way that maybe needs a listening ear, needs a word of encouragement, whatever it is. And I think even like in the context of this conversation, like someone might hear like be a non-anxious presence and be like, I don't know how to be that because I'm really anxious, and
honestly,
again,
I was having those thoughts as you said. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and I think I want to speak to that and say like sometimes I think we think again, even that idea is like me figuring out how to not be anxious so I can put something out there in the world that somebody else can use, and I think instead like. To me, learning to be a non-anxious presence is bringing myself before God in a way that's honest and learning that like the peace of God that transcends human understanding, as like Philippians talks about. Being a non-anxious presence is learning to experience that and struggling to experience that and being honest about that experience. And I think, to me, I'm so much more able to be present to people in their needs and their anxieties, whether it's in my counseling work or with my friends or with my family, because I feel like I'm learning. Like, there are so many things I cannot fix. There are so many things I do not know. I do not have a nice answer for you. And I think part of maybe like my journey in my own faith is that a lot of times when I bring to God my frustrations, my worries, my anxieties, my hurts, like, it's not that he's like, here's this magic word that's gonna fix it all, like, but it's this experience of deep presence that, like, I am not alone. And that for me is transformative. And if I can just rest in that, I think I can become a vessel of that for other people. Of, I also have some anxieties, but I have found a source that is willing to accompany me in the midst of them and give me peace daily and give me grace when I feel like I can't manage it. And I think the world needs people that can wrestle honestly and well with the true horrors and anxieties of our day, including our own. And I think so much of being missional is saying, like, we have found the source of life, right? Like, we have found the way, the truth, and the life, and he is real. And it's not this manufactured tale of transformation. It's this embodied experience of, I am not alone. And I have found a life that makes my life matter, even on the days have nothing to offer and have nothing to give and can't seem to figure out my way through. That God says, like, I still matter. I still have dignity. That it's okay. That I don't have to put something out there in order to make other people think I'm better than I am. That, like, I can truly rest in who he says he is and who he says I am. And I think if there's a way that we can wrestle honestly with that, that would make a difference to our neighbors. That would make a difference to our friends. And so I think, like, so much of that is just letting God meet us where we are, right? Like, it's not this, let me figure out my 5 steps to be less anxious so I can do something good for my neighbor. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, I'm like totally jiving with what you're saying. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, one, I wish I was more of that kind of person. And you know, I gravitate to people that are, and I think you're a much better embodiment of that than I am. And that's part of the reason I love being friends with you, is I sense that from you. And you just have a very grounding presence that I think a lot of people gravitate towards. But I think there at the end, which you were even describing, I think is the epiphany that I've been going. I mean, we're in epiphany, so yeah, it's the epiphany I've been having is, and I think I've been honest about this in the past, maybe, and I'd have to go back on the podcast, but I think I got into this journey thinking, how do I do church better? Some of the structures and institution aren't working for people, and if we do church this way, it'll be a silver bullet. It'll do the thing that we need done. And I think I'm been so much on this journey of realizing, like, the journey was realizing there were no silver bullets, and that I think so often we get so caught up in not only our plans, but just like marking, like, these are God moments, these are non-God moments. Here's when I'm like doing this thing for God, and here's when I'm just like getting through my day. And I think the journey of microchurch and true missional living, we talked about this in an episode, is not just an output journey, it's an input journey. I think God has taught me so much in this journey to stop parsing out what is what, and to just let go of the striving, and just to recognize, like, often the most meaningful things he does in my life are when the moments when I feel like I have nothing, or I feel like I screwed up a conversation, or I feel exhausted and burned out and I don't have anything to offer, and yet God does something with this meager offering to change a neighbor's life, or to do something that it's like ripples versus like when I feel like oh man, I killed that one. I had this justice work plan in my neighborhood and we're going to solve this issue.
Mhm.
I often don't see God doing as much through that. And I think maybe some of the lessons he's wanting to teach us is to redefine mission and our practitionership and our journey with him less through this lens that it was ever about, our agency and what we could do in our own strength, but to recognize
Right.
his presence everywhere and to join him there. I sent this quote to you, and I feel like I just had to share it because I
Mhm.
think this is the epiphany I've been having. It's from Richard Carney of just what if we were to return to the epiphanies of the everyday? What if we would come back to the end, the eschaton in the here and now, back to the end after the end of time that addresses us in each instant? What if we could rediscover ourselves again, face to face with the infinite and the infinitesimal, touch the sacred unfolded in the seed of ordinary things? Such a return would invite us to experience the ultimate in the mundane, the first and the last, the most and the least. It would bring us into dialogue with those who seek the divine in the pause between two breaths. Transcendence in a thorn bush, the Eucharist in a morsel of Madeleine, the kingdom in a cup of cold water, San Marco in a cobblestone, God in a street cry. And I think that's the journey I try to get. I'm so
Mhm.
much a work in progress, and I think there's moments where my old muscle memory and the influencer culture and self-optimization culture gets to me, and I start
Mhm.
jotting down all these plans and these schemes and try to hustle more and try harder and try to squeeze just a little bit more out of myself and my exhaustion or my finitude of 24-hour days. Like maybe I can get 26 hours out of the 24. And but yet on my good days and the days where I wave the white flag, those seem to be the days where God meets me in that and reminds me like of just like these small beautiful ways that he's at work, and an invitation, a graceful invitation for the like Peter, the many stupid times I keep trying to do it on my own and just be like, yeah, there's Drew being an idiot again, inviting me into like these beautiful little moments of getting it. And like, who knows how many more times I'm going to stubbornly try to do it on my own again, and forget.
Mhm.
But those moments that I do are just, they're wonderful and bring tears to my eyes, bring a smile to my face. And I'm reminded that God isn't just transcendent, he's immanent. He's working in and around me. And it just makes me yearn all that much more to
Mm.
slow down and see it.
Yeah. Well, let's end on words of encouragement. What would you say to people who feel overwhelmed or maybe even guilty, not being able to keep up with all the self-improvement they feel like they should be? Or is there a word of love that you want to offer to people that are feeling burnt out, exhausted, or already maxed out, that they can still participate in God's work this year?
I mean, hopefully just what we've been saying has been an encouragement. And I think, yeah, like, welcome to the club. uh, I'm turning 40 this year, and I think I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my body. Like, I don't have it. Like, I just don't have that extra little bit of juice as this year starts. I think this is like the first year I just have no energy to like, I've always had like goals and this mission statement for my life. And
Hmm.
I'm just like, I don't have it this year. Like, I just don't. Like, I can't bring myself to like even pull up the document and type. And like, there's been moments where I feel guilt about that, or like, what's wrong with me? And I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this that feel that too. And I've just been trying to remind myself that like God's grace and his work in my life isn't dependent on whether or not I can pull up that document and come up with some cool plans for my year or have a word for the year or
Hmm.
strive and improve every part of me. Yeah, I want to be a better me. And I hope I'm growing in wisdom. I hope I'm growing in Christ likeness. But I think the offer of God's grace and the gospel is for the tired and the worn out and the burned out and the exhausted. It's
Hmm.
not for the awesome and the achievers and those that seem to hustle a little bit more than everybody else. And so maybe this will be a year that I experience God's grace more than I have previously, because I'm just admitting I don't have it, and maybe there's some others that need that reminder this year too. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would just say you're right where you need to be to experience God's extravagant love and kindness and gentleness and mercy. And that is, I think, the crux of what it looks like to live on mission, is to experience it and to receive it and to know that it's for you as much as it's for your neighbor. But maybe what you need to hear right now is that it's for you. And to open your arms and to open your heart, to let God meet you there, that he's not asking for more than you are. And he's ready to meet you where you actually are. And so I hope, just like us, that everybody listening can this year taste God's mercy and kindness and gentleness and patience and goodness, and know that it's tasting and seeing. That is the goal. Well, I think that we can end on that note, hopefully. I'm grateful for everybody that's joining us and listening, and we're excited to continue this podcast. If you want to find out more about Renaissance as a network, whether it's our microchurches or joining a future cohort with us, you can head to wearerenaissance.org. And on that note, bye!